Today we are talking about the 3 types of market distress, and I'll let you into a little bit of a secret. So we have 3 types of market distress, but professional investors only focus on 2 of the 3, whereas retail investors focus on 1 of the 3. And there's going to be a pop quiz at the end. No prizes though, just bragging rights. So make sure you stick around until the end, and then I will unveil the big secret of which 2 of the 3 you should be focusing on if you're looking to acquire a piece of real estate. So let's talk about the 3 types of market distress. So number 1, we have seller distress. Then we have property distress. Then we have market distress. Oh, you know what? I was writing too big, so now I'm going to go all the way down and go vertical on the whiteboard. That's okay. So seller distress. You know what? That's going to bug me. Let me rewrite market distress here in smaller letters. There we go. If I can add a K. There we go. Spelling for Real Estate Investors 101. Seller distress. What types of what kinds of indicators or situations can put a seller into distress? Well, number 1, we can have financial distress for the seller. Maybe they have a business deal that has gone sour. Maybe they own a couple other businesses that are going bankrupt. Maybe they have other real estate properties in financial need and they have to sell. This is a good example of seller distress. Maybe it's a divorce, and this is putting pressure on the seller. This kind of goes hand in hand with financial distress. Maybe they have to liquidate and they are more motivated to sell their property. Maybe health reasons. Maybe they are quite ill and can't handle the property anymore and they would rather just sell it. Maybe they've died. Actually, that would be the ultimate health reason for seller distress, dying. But that is totally legitimate. What other types of situations can sellers find themselves in? Well, you know what? I think financial, health, and family situations would be the most common. For property, you know a distressed property when you see one. It's that property when you drive by, you just have the feel. So we have maintenance issues. Because if the property isn't getting taken care of, windows aren't being fixed, roof isn't being fixed, the parking lot is falling apart, you just know those types of properties. But it isn't necessarily structural sometimes. There is distress with the property in terms of management. So poor management. And seller distress and property distress often go hand in hand, but it is not necessary. So if the seller's feeling a financial pinch, maybe they're going through a divorce or health-related reasons, that seller's not able to stay on top of the property management, or sometimes with smaller properties, the seller is self-managing, so they can't collect the rent, they can't look after the maintenance because they're looking after their health, or fighting their spouse in court, or just worrying about their finances. So like I said, sometimes these go hand in hand, but not necessarily. Oftentimes there are situations where, let's say a seller has a larger real estate portfolio. This actually just happened a couple months ago with the situation I was looking into. The vendors had a large portfolio spread out over multiple states, and there were 2 properties located in one market, and they just fell by the wayside. They got shuffled. They got shuffled to the bottom of the pile, and this company didn't really care about them very much. Obviously, they cared about their property, but they weren't staying on top of it. So this was a good case of property distress because rents were undervalued, the management wasn't on the ball looking after things, and that was a good situation of property distress. So we have maintenance, poor management. I also mentioned rents. And if management isn't taking care of the property, obviously they're not on the ball and they're not looking after the rents, making sure they are up to fair market value. So these are a couple good examples of property distress. But like I said, when you drive by a property, you just get that feeling that, this property, That's a pretty good indicator of property distress. And then we have market distress. I think the best example, the best recent example of severe market distress was in 2008. During the Great Recession, as it is called, or the global financial crisis, the whole market took a hit. Well, I should say not the whole market, but a large section of the market took a very substantial hit, and this brought property values down. But it doesn't have to be a national or international disaster to affect a real estate market, because remember, real estate is hyper-local. So you have those macro factors affecting real estate, and then you also have local micro factors affecting real estate values and rent supply and all that stuff. So you could have a major employer leave a local market and just devastate the job market there, and that could cause pretty severe market distress in that situation. So we have employers. And then, you know what, let's just stick with the Great Recession and employers. We could go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with market distress with all the different types of things, but I want to keep things pretty simple. And if you can't tell already, my writing is pretty chicken scratch, so if I try to jam too many things on the whiteboard, it's going to get really, really confusing for those of you watching at home. So remember how I mentioned that professional investors focus on 2 of the 3 and retail investors focus on 1. Can anybody take a guess on which one a retail investor would focus on? I feel like I'm on Romper Room or Polka Dot Door asking for the audience for answers. Well, retail investors tend to focus on market distress. You know, you will hear things like, oh, the market's in the dumps, oh, the market's hit rock bottom, it's time to buy real estate. And you have lots of people, especially now, they're saying, hey, I'm going to wait until the market crashes and buy all sorts of real estate. The issue in adopting that strategy is you're not really getting a discount, because if the market drops for everybody, everybody's getting the same type of discount. So, and plus you can't predict market distress. You can't time the market. I've never met somebody who has successfully timed a real estate market perfectly. Obviously, there are indicators and all sorts of different metrics you can follow to give you a hint of what's going to happen in a market, but you can never 100% time a market. I've never seen it happen. If somebody can actually prove to me that they have timed a market and knew exactly what they were doing and was able to tell the future exactly, I will hire them and pay them $1 billion a year because that would be the greatest thing ever. Also, a crystal ball could be pretty helpful. So if you have a crystal ball that's working, let me know. And even if it's broken, I'm sure we can find a psychic to fix it up. And we can go on and make gazillions of dollars knowing exactly what's going to happen in a market. So retail investors focus on market distress, and you see headlines all the time. And this is where it really separates the amateur investors from the professional investors. A professional real estate investor focuses on things that they can control. We know we can't control the market. There are the smartest people in the country running models on the economy, and they can't even predict things. So chances are a normal person buying and selling and investing in real estate can't do that if the smartest people at NASA grade brain levels can't figure things out. And the best thing is keep it simple. There's that KISS principle, and that really applies to real estate investing. So how can an investor control and deal with seller distress? Well, we can offer the seller terms. So let's say they're in financial issues, or maybe they're facing a really big tax burden. Maybe we can offer them a term vendor financing and really spread that out over the long term to help them out. If it's a divorce, we can offer a very quick closing, or maybe more flexible terms in terms of closing it until their family situation is straightened out. And health issues, well, we'll just take this property off your hands right now, but we need a discount in exchange for offering those fabulous terms for the seller. So these are really things that we can control because we can negotiate and go back and forth with the seller and really fix their problems. And this is what real estate investing is all about. It's all about fixing problems and solving problems. And oftentimes, the more complicated the problem, the less people want to deal with it. And that's a great opportunity for a smart real estate investor who's willing to rack their brain and come up with some really creative solutions to a vendor's problems. Then we have property distress. Well, how do we deal with maintenance? Well, we come in with a renovation and rehab budget and fix all the things that need fixing and that we're not taking care of under previous ownership. Poor management. We bring in a new property manager with a new game plan. Maybe that property manager was not a good fit for the property. Maybe they weren't specialists in that type of property, or maybe they had other things going on and they weren't if we have seller distress, they're not on property management. So if we have a new owner coming in who's really on the ball, really on top of management, putting in new systems and making sure things are top notch, that's a great way to turn around. Then we have rents. Again, that factors into property management. A good property manager will know exactly where the market is in terms of rents. You will have good discussions between the owner, which is the investor, and property manager on the long-term game plan for the property, and you will set targets for when you want certain things done and where you would like rents when you exit the property. This is all modeled into your property game plan or business plan. So these are things we can control. A professional investor, we are very aware of the market. We know we have a feel of where the market's heading, especially right now. General consensus is, and I think it's pretty accurate, that we are approaching the end of this market cycle. But we can't control it. We don't know if the market's going to tank tomorrow. Maybe it's going to tank in 2 years. Maybe it's going to tank in 4 years. We can't tell, so why worry about it? We just have to be aware when we are underwriting these properties and factoring this into our evaluations and spreadsheets and all that good stuff that goes into good underwriting. So, when we are underwriting properties, we focus on seller distress, we focus on property distress because we can get a discount. If a property looks horrible and there's broken windows and the parking lot's falling apart, the asphalt has turned into gravel, let's say, we can get a discount for that because of all the deferred maintenance and all that stuff that we have to fix. But we can't get a discount because of market distress because the property, there's no discount. Let's say, I will just illustrate my point. Let's say the market is right here. This is fair market value. And we have property A, B, and property C. If property A has seller distress, the value is probably going to be down here. If property B has property distress, so deferred maintenance and all of that stuff, the value is going to be down here. If we're just banking on the market, if the market's good, we're going to end up paying full market value if there's no distress factored into property C. But if the market then tanks, let's say we have experienced a downturn, well, new fair market value is right here, and then we have a new lower valuation, but this right here is fair market value again. And for another similar property, we'll have property D, let's say, value tanks, we're still at fair market value. There's no upside potential. There's no problem solving occurring. And this is where lots of retail investors get really hung up. They focus so much on the market. Oh, the market's bad. I have to buy all my real estate. I'm not going to buy any real estate because the market's too good. I have to wait until the market crashes. That's not how professional real estate investors look at property and analyze property. It's all about finding problems to solve. The best real estate investors solve problems for sellers because everybody has problems, let's face it. But when we're dealing with large commercial properties, sometimes the sellers get pretty expensive problems, and we can save them a lot of stress and effort and even money in the long run by offering them creative solutions. So I gave you the answer to the pop quiz. So, which of the two types of distress do professional real estate investors focus on? Well, the answer is seller distress and property distress. Retail investors, amateur investors, they just focus on market distress, but we can't control it. And if we can't control it, there's no sense worrying about it because you will be up all night worrying about those things that you can never control and you can't predict. Even going back to 2008, I have discussions all the time with guests on my podcast, Purchase to Profits. And these guests will say they know people who stopped buying in 2004 because they thought the market was going to tank and experience a correction, and they missed out on some of the golden years of getting some really great returns when they should have been focusing on finding seller distress and property distress and just being aware of a potential market correction and building that into your underwriting. But as long as you're buying properties with good solid fundamentals in markets that have the key market drivers there, market distress, that's something you can weather the storm. And I should draw the pirate ship again, weathering the storm. But if you have any questions about this, you can go to callseth.com and we can have a discussion about the types of property distress. Maybe you're looking at a property right now and you would like some advice on how to solve some problems. So callseth.com and we will see you tomorrow.